Thank you so much, Crystal, for calling in.
Of course. Hi there.
So you have been struggling with phobia and panic attacks before. And tell me, what did that look like?
Sure. So I guess it was a couple of years ago, I started to develop a pretty powerful fear of going to the doctor and anything medical related. And I would think about it and start to get anxious. I would think about having my blood pressure taken and start to get anxious, even though there was no rational reason or explanation on why I should be feeling that way. I haven't had severe health issues in the past, but I felt very unsafe. And so I started to have these panic attacks prior to going into a doctor's office. I would still continue to go and see a doctor because I knew it was important, but I would have a lot of fear and anxiety. My heart would race. I couldn't slow down. And then they would take my blood pressure, and my blood pressure would be really high. So that created this loop that I stayed in of just, I have high blood pressure now. This anxiety is causing all these health issues for me. And it made me not want to go to the doctor, even though I would still go, like I said. But it was just a very uncomfortable experience.
So you actually lost trust in your body, in your mind, and you felt kind of trapped in it, out of control with it, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And then I would put pressure on myself when I would go to the doctor to have really good blood pressure. So I started almost obsessing about it. And then I would check it, and it would be high, and then I'd put more pressure on myself, like I need to get this under control, and it would create this anxiety loop.
And one of the anxieties you also had was that you were really watching your body. You shared about that you watched your heart and your chest, and you wondered if there is now a heart attack or something wrong with you. And so that created also, again, this almost phobia of any physical sensations that immediately were interpreted as something bad.
Absolutely. Yeah, my heart would race, and then I would immediately think, I need to get this under control. This is going to cause a heart attack later, or, there's something wrong with my heart, because when I would get anxious, my heart would obviously do things. And so trying to not read into it that way and going into this worst-case scenario mindset was really important. But unfortunately, that's the pattern that I developed, was there's something severely wrong.
Now, as I mentioned during the program, that one way of starting to get a different perspective on the anxiety and on the symptoms and what the anxiety is making you do in response to it is to get a deeper understanding. So what are actually the dots that we need to connect? What actually is really going on? Where is Waldo here? What is actually the anxiety trying to tell me? And what did you find out through, our work together?
Absolutely. I learned that the anxiety is not something that I should be afraid of and push away. Whenever I would start to experience anxiety, it was an immediate, I got to get rid of it. I've got to get rid of it. And now I see it as a part of me, a child like Crystal at 5 years old, who dealt with some very stressful, intense situations. And I felt unsafe quite a bit as a kid, and my very driven personality and this need to be in control and even almost putting pressure on myself was how I ultimately survived and ended up thriving as an adult. But over time, it kind of took a turn in a way that I didn't really understand, and I was afraid of the anxiety, and I was putting more pressure on myself. And so now I see the anxiety as me at 5 years old, and I've built a relationship with that part of myself, and I empathize with that part of myself. And I also remind that part of myself that I am an adult and that I am empowered and I can take care of things. And that if I go into a doctor's office or if I go into any situation that might make me a little anxious or nervous, I remind that part of myself, it's okay, I've got this.
Now, would you say that when the anxiety came up, that there were changes in your life, that this, comfort zone of being the achiever and being in control was rattled up, and that was maybe one of the reasons why the anxiety came up?
Yes, absolutely. So I had actually gone through the ending of a relationship. I went through a divorce followed by some challenges at my place of employment, and both of which hurt my confidence quite a bit, and I felt very disempowered. In both instances, I felt forms of rejection, different types of forms, but rejection nonetheless. And I think at that point in my life, I had almost really given my power away. I gave my power away to external situations, to external relationships, instead of acknowledging and knowing that power resides within me.
So would you say that the anxiety had actually a positive message? I mean, did it try to make you aware of things that you haven't really dealt with and that it was time to deal with them? And what do you feel like, the crystal before you even had the anxiety and the crystal that you have now in front of you, what's the difference between the two?
Oh, yeah. So I think that had all of this not surfaced, I would never come to understand that I don't have to achieve and prove myself to be valuable and to be enough. I think I got a lot of my value from my relationships and from my work, and that was something that I had done historically. And so through this, I came to understand that it's not what's outside of me that defines who I am. It's who I am internally. It's who I already am. But had I not had the anxiety and going through this process, I don't think I ever would have realized that. I think that it would always be very egoic. It would always be about how much can I achieve, how much can I control, how much can I do, how much can I help this person, how much does this relationship ultimately define who I am. And I don't see it that way anymore. It really was a signal for me to go deeper into myself and to really understand what self-love even means.
And that's such an amazing, you could say, turnaround. If you are dealing with anxiety and you want to avoid yourself, you want to run away from yourself, and ultimately you're coming full circle into yourself and you're loving yourself more, trusting yourself more, and finding yourself more. So, I mean, just like in my case, would you also say that the anxiety was an important teacher for you?
Absolutely. I've learned so much through this process. It's really been a transformation, and I feel closer to myself than I ever have before.
And the beauty is that you actually got remarried and you're very happily married. And you also, I think, are way more empowered at work. So how do you show up, for example, at work, which often was one really stressful situation for you? How is the new crystal different at work?
Mm-hmm. So I'm much more clear about boundaries. So again, previously I would let achievement take over and be in the driver's seat. And so that would mean that I would work crazy hours. I stayed pretty stressed out. And so now I'm really clear about setting those boundaries. And then I also don't give away my power. So when the workday starts and I'm in a meeting, for example, I don't let other people's opinion of me dictate how I feel about myself. I look at this as I'm here to add value. I'm here to do a good job. I'm here to make a contribution. But this isn't about what other people think of me, and this isn't about me having to achieve everything and be the best. This is about showing up in a way where I'm centered, I'm grounded, I am empowered, and I can make a contribution based on the natural talents and abilities that I possess.
And I'm sure you are even more appreciated at work because of it, because you're not in that stress and maybe achiever pleaser mode.
I think so. I think that other people have noticed as well that it's important that we create boundaries for our personal lives. And I think other people have appreciated that and have also adopted similar behaviors. I also think that coming in not super stressed out and being more calm and collected helps other people. And they start to pick up on that energy, and it really helps them create a more positive work environment as well.
Well, so if you would want to give a piece of advice to the listeners that may be struggling with fear and anxiety, with panic attacks, with phobias, what would you tell them? How would you recommend for them to start on this journey that you went through?
Yeah, I think it's important to know that when we're in an anxious state, we're kind of limiting ourselves, and our heads are down, and we can't lift them up and see the complete picture. But if we can try to just open our minds a little bit and recognize that within this very uncomfortable, dark place, there is an opportunity, and there is something beautiful, and that beautiful thing is you. And it's really understanding a part of ourselves that we don't understand yet. It's a mystery, right? We're going through this, and we don't understand it. But through healing and with my work with you, Dr. Friedemann, I've learned that there is so much behind it, and there's so much transformation there. And as deep as my anxiety was and as deep as my fear was, that's just as high up I can go in terms of positivity and potential. And the path continues. I mean, I'm certainly not perfect, and I still get anxious, but now I don't have the stories wrapped around it. I don't have this fight or flight response. And even physically, if my body does, if I take my blood pressure and I get nervous, that's okay.
Right.
I don't have to beat myself up about it. I don't have to create that story around it that there's something wrong with me or that I'm going to have a heart attack or something like that. So I think it's really important to just recognize that even though it's painful and even though it's hard, there's so much beauty and value in the process of going into it.
Well, I always believe that anxiety and fear are a sign of untapped power inside of us. And the more anxiety and fear we have, the more we can find inside of us of that power. And I think you are a great example of that. And I really want to thank you so much for calling in and being such an inspiration also for many others, because I know that you also at the beginning felt, well, I have to live with it. I have to maybe just manage it, maybe with medication, and there is nothing really else I can do. And at the same time, there was also a curiosity and an open-mindedness to maybe get different answers. And you are certainly, just by example, giving a whole new perspective on that anxiety and panic attacks and phobias are actually ultimately an opportunity. They're actually a nice nudge that may feel uncomfortable, but it is still a nudge to also look more inside for those inner resources, look more inside for the truth of who you are, look more inside for what really is your worthiness, because many people that are struggling with what I described before, phobias, panic attacks, it is a matter also of your relationship to yourself. How much do you value yourself? How much do you care about yourself? How much do you believe in yourself? And I think in your case, Crystal, without your anxiety, you may have never found that self-worth that you now have. And I think that also makes you just make different choices and probably share more of your gifts and talents than ever before.
Definitely. I feel so much more confident, empowered, and connected to myself than I ever have. And it was through this journey that I came to this place.